New York, winter 1993. The Israeli Film Festival in the Big Apple. I'm in my sophomore year of my undergraduate studies at the prestigious University of Columbia. Still don't know exactly what I'm going to do next, but life, on the face of it, looks and feels perfect. New York, the metropolitan, and I, alone from Petah Tikva, the small province, conquers every challenge in the academy and in the world of college sports. Feel on top of the world, rain dripping outside the hall. On the screen, the film Zohar about the rise and fall of the king of Israeli Oriental singing. I've always loved Oriental music, but Zohar was something special to me. It's hard for me to explain why, but that's how I felt. He was the king, with a big voice and a shaky life story, and there, in faraway New York, something connected us. But this something made me feel uncomfortable and throughout the whole movie. A restlessness I never knew, bad thoughts that repeat themselves and are not really related to the situation. Cold sweat covered my whole body and I trembled. I couldn't calm myself. I felt like I'm really going crazy, losing it completely. What's wrong with me? I'm freaking out. If I remember correctly, because from here the memory becomes a bit blurry. To the movie I went with friends, but I came back alone. But I'm not sure. I may have left even shortly before the movie ended and went directly to the subway back to the university dorms. And even if I came back with friends, I was really alone with myself. The subway incident was also a huge blow to my inner worth and made me feel terrible. Again, I'm not sure whether it happened that night or a night or two later, but I remember going down the subway stairs. The train is coming, its doors open and I try to get inside, but it cannot. My legs are unable to carry me inside the train. People are getting inside and outside of the train and I'm standing there completely lost, confused, not knowing what is going on with me. It took more than an hour and 5 trains until I was able to recollect myself and get in. And at that time, I'm an outstanding student at one of the 8 best universities in the world, the captain of the soccer team that only a few months earlier had won the Ivy League championship, appears in a New York Newsday headline on its 10 million readers, and stars alongside Icelandic national team, and who will soon to become a leading player in the English Stoke City Premiership team. At my peak, at least, that was the way to think, but I was totally depressed, sad, and dismantled. I suffered from the worst nightmares that night, troublesome thoughts and unbearable anxieties. I'm alone in New York, winter, without my family, without my childhood friends, without my girlfriend who I left in Israel, and with the fulfillment of a dream that in retrospect turned out not to be my dream, and even when succeeded above expectations, did not feel like. For me, I was just like Zohar, the great king who fell and was revealed in all his nakedness, the undisputed star that has fallen and slipped to its lowest point in life. A difficult time that was my biggest crisis. The alone of before that evening at the Israeli Film Festival in New York and the alone of after that night will be 2 different people. The old alone died and a new alone emerged, weakened, out of focus, confused. Why did it happen to me? The question that has preoccupied me for so many years. To alone that used to succeed in everything he did. The best student, one of the youngest soccer players ever to play in the Israeli First League. The handsome and the most wanted guy. How that alone slipped into a place so low that I experienced in those days. Everything was perfect in my world, but only on the surface. I had a girlfriend who was waiting in Israel for my return, a supportive and loving family, friends at the university and in Israel, and a future that seemed to be guaranteed with a degree in economics with honors. But what would seem perfect perhaps on the outside, on the inside, felt empty and meaningless. At that point, the foundation of the model I've developed over the years, the 7-dimensional model of self-worth, which is the diagnostic basis for the maximization of each person's self-worth, were founded. The self-worth that is so significant and dramatic in building a person's mental immune system, the immune system that prevents them from reaching those moments like that evening in New York, and if they do show up, help to deal with them and skip them and leave them behind. But in order to reach that life-changing model, I had to go through a lot, and it was not easy. I went in two tracks. In one, I lived a normal life. I returned to Israel, got married, started my job as a senior manager in the financial world, got my MBA. My two sons were born. I got divorced, remarried, my daughter was born, and I lived my life. The second route was personal therapy. I wrote poetry in it, lots of poetry. I ran a lot. I did meditations, learned and practiced mindfulness. I was trained in EFT, in exercise bars and thrill therapy, and I became a certified CBT therapist. But throughout the 25 years, and in both tracks, I tried to figure out what happened to that Alon that disappeared in 1993 and how the new Alon could reconnect to the old Alon to figure out what was there and to feel happy again. And here comes the rule of inner self-worth, the value that is yours, with you always. Anywhere and at any time, you have no way of escaping from it, and even if you manage for a brief moment to ignore it, it comes back like a spring and appears in front of you. It is with you day and night. The inner self-worth is your strength, the energy, the tool that helps you deal with life challenges. It is more important to understand its characteristics, to act, to strengthen and manage it at all times. The process of building my inner self-worth took years, and the model that I developed shortened the process and can turn years of work into something focused and precise that raises the inner self-worth in a short series of sessions. The model is built on scores in 7 existential dimensions that are actually the dimensions of life: wisdom, family, career, friends, appearance, romantic life, and I with myself. Each of the dimensions has importance at the general level for each person, and there is the personal score that each patient gives to himself on the dimensions. A sum of the multiplies is the score of each person's intrinsic value. The old Alon who came to New York had a dream of becoming a top soccer player in Israel. This dream shattered sometimes along the way. The replacement of success in New York seemed to be a good on the outside, but on the inside, the feeling was different. In order to fulfill his new career dream, Alon had to compromise on 3 dimensions of self-worth, and at least for a limited time gave them up. On the family, friends, and girlfriend he left in Israel. And there was the dramatic damage to the inner self-worth. The career dimension that was so important to Alon, and from a young age received a high grade, continued to be priced low on a personal level despite the great success in New York. Like that brilliant guitarist who dreamed performing as a rocker and ended up playing for the Philharmonic. An amazing success, but not according to his own feeling. And this feeling of failure was a trigger for the fall in my self-worth. And a fall in one dimension has effects as on the other dimensions. In my case, the fall flooded the price I paid in my romantic life dimension with my girlfriend, who I left behind, in the family dimension, which was far away, and in the friends dimension. The result was a crash in my inner self-worth and a fall into anxiety, fears, and depression. The 7-dimensional model of self-worth takes the 7 important dimensions in a person's life and specifies the dimension in which there is a problem. The formula reveals whether the problem is in the perception of the dimension at the general level or the personal conduct of the person in the dimension. With the diagnostic tool that has been tested on hundreds of patients and with inspiring success, it is possible to access the various therapeutic tools from the world of CBT, meditation, mindfulness, EFT, thrill therapy, guided imagery, and other tools, and improve and correct human perception and performances. And remember, each of us is a world in its entirely and good in its own way. Each has its own virtues and things it needs to improve and fix. But there are 3 basic rules we must all remember. The first and most important rule is to accept ourselves and love who we are. The second rule is to take responsibility for things we have done, and wherever we need to correct, we should do so and not repeat mistakes. And the third rule is to cultivate, preserve, and strengthen our inner self-worth, which stands by us and always protect us. And last, there is nothing more exciting than looking today from the safe and powerful place I am at Alon I left behind, hugging him as best I can, like the hug I give my kids every day, and to tell him how happy I am to reunite with my old myself and to feel the same like at those old times, king of the world.